life when everything was falling apart. My health, my marriage, and myself. And I needed to find a way to rediscover me, but I needed a big idea to help me get there. Well, the last thing I ever thought I'd be doing was fly in a tiny plane, I hate to fly, over hundreds of miles of green forest that look like bunches of broccoli, and then land on a ridiculously small strip of dirt in the middle of the Amazon. Suddenly, I was surrounded by jungle everywhere and people that were mostly naked. But I got to see the freshwater pink dolphins. They really exist, and they're a beautiful shade of baby pink. And I rode in canoes past midnight with alligators alongside of me. And then I swallowed this exotic but toxic concoction that I had to throw up in front of a medicine man, like a real medicine man. It was crazy. I mean, it was really crazy. But it was life-changing for me, and I have to tell you, I would do it again tomorrow. Maybe not the stuff I tried for the medicine man, because it kind of tasted like mud, but I would go to the Amazon again tomorrow. What about all of you? Have you ever felt as though your life is falling apart? Or maybe you're just stuck in the same old routine, kind of like one big Groundhog Day. And that's when we start to ask ourselves questions. Is this all there is? Does that sound familiar? What is my life's purpose anyway? And why do I do what everyone else wants me to do and not what I want to do? And why can't my life be more exciting and happier? I have been listening to questions like this for the past 14 years in my corporate and career strategy work with PhDs, MBAs, and lots of uber smart people. But here's the thing. Underneath it all, they were all unhappy. And as part of my work, I follow lots of studies and polls about happiness. And a recent Harris poll reported that we are 2% happier than we were last year. That sounds pretty good, right? 2%? But when I saw that the number went from 31 to 33, I realized 2/3 of us are still miserable. I really believe that unhappiness has become an epidemic in our society, and I want to find a cure. So years ago, I started doing research on ways to get people out of their daily grind, which was grinding them down, and into a place of purpose, passion, and happiness. And that's when I discovered something really interesting. I found people who were happy. I found people leading inspiring lives, and they inspired others. I mean, if you think about your life, it's the defining moments, it's the significant events that define you, that define all of us. And that's what defined these people. They did something remarkable that changed the course of their lives for the better. And that remarkable thing is called a misogi. And that's spelled M-I-S-O-G-I. You can Google it. And I actually thought it was a sushi roll when I first heard the term. But it's not. A misogi actually started centuries ago as an ancient Japanese Shinto ritual of cold water purification. And that's after you undergo something like climbing the tallest mountain or spending days in prayer. And then you step under this waterfall that's so cold. It's like being in Alaska in your underwear in the middle of winter. I mean, you are really cold and you are really wet. But the idea is that this icy water washes away, or shocks really, the old you, and then thermogenesis, which is our body's natural warming mechanism, kicks in, and then ushers in the new you. And you're calmer, and you feel more of a sense of your place in the world. You can still do this ancient ceremony today, but you can do it with a modern twist. Let me tell you what a misogi has become in our time. It's something intentional that you plan that takes you outside the outermost limits of your comfort zone and beyond the realm of what you thought was possible. So it's not setting a goal, like going to the gym. It's not ticking off something on your bucket list, like skydiving, and it's not even stepping a bit outside your comfort zone, which many of us are afraid to do anyway. And if we do, the joy doesn't always last. Why? Because we're not thinking big enough. We're not stretching enough. I like to think of a misogi as the big reach. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's actually really easy to tell if you're on track to your misogi because there's only one major rule. And that is, it has to have a 50% or greater chance of failure, which also means it has a really good chance of success. And then there are a couple minor rules. Can't kill you, and it can't harm others. I know the idea sounds a little crazy, kind of like my Amazon experience, but if it's not big enough, then you're not invested enough. And chances are you won't affect that positive, lasting change that we all desire in our lives. When you do a misogi, you gain this sense of calm, this sense of knowing clarity about your place in the world. You gain confidence and more courage and happiness that actually lasts. And the best part is that when you achieve your misogi or even come close, it becomes part of your new comfort zone, and then you're wanting to do another one. I'd like to share the stories of a few people that have done misogis that have changed their lives for the better. Now, we've all heard of Michelangelo, right? One of the most celebrated artists in the history of the world. Well, I'd like to share a story about Michelangelo you may not have heard of. Michelangelo was actually a tortured soul. He took on projects that he didn't want to do because he needed the money. And he abandoned projects that he really wanted to do because he needed the money. Well, one day, he was presented with this 17-foot piece of rock. Many sculptors had attempted to create an epic piece of art out of it. Every one of them had failed. But as Michelangelo stood in front of this blank slate, this overwhelming knowing came deep in his soul. I know what this is supposed to be. See, for the first time, Michelangelo stopped listening to the opinions of others, and he listened to himself. This is a key element of finding your misogi. Ignore the chatter and listen to you. And so Michelangelo gladly took on the challenge, and at the ripe old age of 26, he started to chisel away the marble. He didn't even hear the jokes of his colleagues or the jealousy that followed behind him because he had conviction. And in 2 short years, 2 years, Michelangelo unveiled the David, one of the most famous pieces of art ever created. And if you haven't seen it, go to Florence, Italy, and be amazed. Okay, so what happened next? Did you know that Michelangelo never thought of himself as a painter? Yet a few short later, he painted the Sistine Chapel. No big deal. I believe that Michelangelo, through his misogi, was able to redefine the possible in his life. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, I'm not 26. I'm getting up there. I'm on the back 9. Like, it's too late for me. It's never too late. And it was never too late for Harlan. Harlan dropped out of school in 7th grade, and he job hopped his way through life until he retired with little money and little meaning. And in his free time, of which he had a lot, he started to think back to his childhood about the things that brought him joy. This is another way that you can find your misogi. Go back to your childhood. Think about right now all those things that made you happy before all that responsibility kicked in. And what made Harlan happy was cooking with his mom. They had come up with this recipe for chicken that was out of this world. They'd made it many times, people loved it. He didn't have money, but he had conviction. So through sheer will and determination, he launched Kentucky Fried Chicken. And several years later, he sold it for millions and millions of dollars, and then Colonel Harlan Sanders became happier and wealthier than he had ever been in his life. So it's never too late. When I came back from the Amazon, I started to write a lot about happiness, about work happiness, about life happiness. And in my last book, I highlight the stories of everyday people, incredible people really, who've done remarkable things to change the direction of their lives for the better too. And one of those people is my friend Darren, whose story is a testament to the power of misogi. So when Darren was 19, he wanted to become a professional golfer. I mean, he was potentially that good. but a sudden snowstorm accident left him a paraplegic instead. He was pretty depressed. And after lots and lots of therapy, his doctor said, Darren, you have to move to a moister climate for your lungs or you're going to have real issues. So Darren and his caretaker, he needed 24-hour care, and he still does to this day, moved to Maui, where Darren became really good friends with world-famous windsurfers and a famous windsurfing board shaper. And one day Darren was sitting around with these guys and he said, you know, I have such a desire, a calling really, to be at one with the ocean and to windsurf like you guys, but I know for me that that's impossible. But see, his friends didn't think so. So through trial and error, they built an adaptive vessel that enabled Darren to experience windsurfing across the channel from Maui to Molokai. And Darren told me in his own words, Jody, it was the happiest day of my life, the happiest. So this is another element of a successful misogi. Surround yourself with supporters. No naysayers are allowed because they, your tribe, experience the same positive, lasting effects of your misogi that you do. It was a big high-five day for all of them. Well, then Darren started thinking, if I can windsurf across the channel, maybe I can start painting again. I mean, he had learned to paint as a kid, but obviously it was more challenging now. But Darren realized that he had some movement in his right shoulder, and he was able to take duct tape, of all things, and sort of place it on paper. This became the core to his paintings. And then he had someone put a splint on his wrist with a paintbrush. They would turn the paper, and he could sort of make the strokes. Today, Darren's paintings cover famous restaurants throughout Las Vegas and a number of TV show production sets on major television networks. Darren is happier and more fulfilled than he's ever been in his life. I can't wait to see what he does next. So, regardless of your condition, your age, or even your financial status, if you want to create lasting positive change in your life, a misogi can get you there. And here's how you do it. First, you have to unplug. You have to unplug from this hectic, crazy, 24/7 life we lead. And that means, people, you have to put your cell phones away for a while. And I know that that can be a misogi for lots of us. Then you get in touch with you. Go for a walk in nature, sit on a park bench, meditate. Your misogi will come to you and you will know it without a doubt. Then you need to commit to your misogi and surround yourself with those supporters I talked about. And then do your misogi. And whether you achieve your misogi or not, the effects will be so lasting that you're going to start to believe that the impossible is actually possible. It's an amazing process, and I recommend it for everyone. I started by telling you a story about rediscovering me by going to the Amazon. And I'd like to share one more misogi with you that's very personal and I've actually never talked about before. So I had 3 children in 3 years, which for some people could be a misogi. And my oldest son, Christopher, is significantly delayed. He's more than half his life behind. And several years ago, I was at a meeting at a school with the teacher, the principal, all kinds of specialists, and they proceeded to tell me about Chris. Well, Jody, Chris can't talk. He only speaks in vowels. And if he can't communicate, well, then he can't connect with the other kids. So we've all decided that Chris will talk by computer. Well, tears never filled my eyes faster than that day, and I just cried in front of everyone. I mean, I think I was bawling. But through the pain and the tears, this thunderous voice hit me in the center of my stomach. I will teach Chris to talk. And I told them. They all just shook their heads and said, that's impossible. Classic mom in denial. So, left the meeting, went out to my car, and I thought, oh, great. I had just committed to something impossible, and I had no idea how I was going to do it. But what I did know is that Chris loved to sing. And I always sang with my kids because it was fun. So I got in contact with a speech therapist, and I said, what are you working on? She said, oh, we're working on the oo sound, because that's how you form the easiest consonants at the front of the mouth for any of you that do speech therapy. I said, okay. So I went home, it was dinner time, and I was making chili. and I started to stir it. And I made up this song, it was around Halloween time, about stirring the brew. And the chorus had ooh, ooh, which dovetailed with what he was working on. And all of a sudden, I heard Chris say the B sound. I stopped in my tracks, and I'm sure my other children heard it too. And I thought, oh my God, I'm onto something. So I made up a song about going to the zoo, and Chris had the Z sound. And after about 100 songs and working with his therapist, Chris could talk. And now as a young man, he is the happiest person on this planet. Why? Because he's understood. And what mom couldn't be happier than to know her child is happy and understood in this world? Okay, now it's your turn. Are you ready to find your misogi? I can tell already by looking at some of you that you're already thinking about it. What big reach could you do this year that would be a benchmark event in your life that would take you way, way, way outside your comfort zone to a point of positive, lasting change? Is it a trip? Maybe you'll quit that job you never liked and join the Peace Corps. Is it a physical feat? How about cycling across the country backwards? Is it a mission? Maybe you'll help find the cure to an incurable disease. When you were born, your life had no limits. So don't limit your life now. Do a misogi. Go for the big reach. And I promise you, only good will come from it, including happiness that lasts.